one of the most important things is stakeholder management. I like understanding the landscape clearly. And to your point, what's at stake and what the trade-offs are. I think weighing options is really key at this level. So having a degree of discernment for sure. It's assessing risk, but you can assess risk and I think still not make it the right decision.
Welcome to Building Better CMOs, a podcast about how marketers can get smarter and stronger. I am Greg Stewart, the CEO of the nonprofit MMA Global. And that voice you heard at the top is Charisse Hughes. She's the Senior Vice President and Chief Growth Officer at Kellanova, which has spun off from the former Kellogg Company last year. She previously served in marketing leadership roles at Avon, Estee Lauder, and Pandora, and she's also on the board of directors of Crocs. And some really exciting news, Charisse has just recently been announced as the Vice Chair of the MMA Global Board. Can't thank her enough for that, so I'm delighted to get her on the show this week. Now, today on Building Better CMOs, Charisse and I are going to talk about the dangers of short-termism, the evolution of the CMO title as evidenced by hers, balancing hard truth with optimism, and so much more. This podcast is all about the challenges that marketers face and unlocking the true power that marketing can have. Charisse is going to tell us how she did that right after this. Charisse Hughes, so nice to have you here on Building Better CMOs today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Greg. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, I don't know. This is going to be, this will not be late breaking news for anybody, but we had a small earthquake here in New York City today.
I know.
Did you hear
I just texted so many of my friends. Like, how scary was that? Were you at home?
I'm not in the city today. I'm out on the East End of Long Island. But it was funny. I was on a call with somebody on my team who's a little bit closer. He was really kind of panicked. He was like, oh my God, there's like an earthquake. And I go, are you making this up? Like really, like there's no earthquakes in New York City area. And then like 20 seconds later, there was just a light rumble here.
I need to check when the last one was. I was living in New York when we had the last earthquake.
Oh, but it's been like forever. Doesn't it feel like it? I mean, I really don't remember.
It had to be,
forever.
I don't know, the teens or something, 2010 or something. I don't know.
Listen, for people in California, they really worry about that stuff. Or here, it felt like very exciting.
Yes,
it felt like
exactly.
a kind of a fun ride.
Yeah, I asked all my friends, did you feel it?
It's kind of like the wrong attitude. I'm sure they have. And I should be respectful. I'm hoping there's no damage, so I don't know. Maybe we'll have to cut this out if there was. I apologize to people, but I don't think there was. So, all good. So listen, Charisse, I think that what we want to do here, before I sort of get to the kind of big question with you, is let's talk a little bit about Kellanova. So brand new company. Let's maybe just take a moment and not assume that all listeners know. So could you just introduce the company to them first?
Thank you for letting me do that. So Kellanova is a company that is the result of the spin-off of the Kellogg Company. And so many of you know the Kellogg Company, 117 plus years old. And in October of 2023, we spun the company into two. And we spun WK Kellogg Co., which is the North America cereal business. So we spun that into its independent, publicly traded company. And the remaining business is Kellanova, which is what I work for. And within that business is our brands like Pringles, Cheez-It, Pop-Tarts, Rice Krispies Treats, and we also have an international cereal business. So that is Kellanova, an amazing portfolio of great brands that are loved by people all over the globe and for many, many years.
Oh my God, love. Like your brand health score for those brands are just have to be like off the charts.
Absolutely. Talk about longevity too. I mean, this is a masterclass in how you develop and maintain great brands.
What is the oldest of those brands, by the way?
The oldest is the Kellogg Master brand.
Yep. Okay, of course.
And then after that probably is Cheez-It, and then Pringles, and then Pop-Tarts. I think I have that in the right order. Pop-Tarts is 60 years old this year.
Wow.
Can you believe
crazy.
it? It's amazing.
I really am. I'm serious, not just because you're here, but I'm a big fan.
Yes.
Big fan.
Great
so
brands.
Great. So here's the thing that I think is most interesting about you. Okay, well, listen, we're going to come back to some of your background too, because I kind of place in some of the conversation, but also too, just to be clear for everybody, this is Building Better CMOs. But your title is actually Chief Growth Officer. Although you have been CMO, you did officially have the title CMO to previous company. But so talk a little about Chief Growth Officer. I don't know if I would have seen that for sure coming, but
I mean, I think you're seeing the evolution of the CMO title. And what I like about the growth title is that it reinforces the value that marketers and people who are marketing adjacent bring to the company. And I think that often gets lost. And so while I was originally focused on marketing, I had some capability around advanced analytics. I added R&D and innovation to my scope. And so when you think about the different growth levers that the where to play within strategy, marketing is a part of it, RGM is a part of it, white space opportunity, innovation, of course, is a part of it. So all those elements go into that growth agenda, if you will.
Can I ask a funny question? Was it your idea to have chief growth officer or the company's idea?
Well, actually, the company has had chief growth officers in the past.
Oh, okay.
So that is not new to the organization. And it was a natural evolution as I added R&D and innovation. It really just made sense.
Yeah. I had an interesting conversation on one other episode here. I forget exactly who it was, but they were talking about the importance of title and what it signals to the rest of the company about what you're doing. It was a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And in fact, we as a team just rolled out a new mission statement, and we wanted to make sure within marketing, we talk about the end benefit. So that's both growth and value creation to the enterprise, right?
Yes.
Yes. And being able to talk about that more and more, I think, is critical for marketers.
Yeah, it feels like it's kind of been left out of sort of the conversation or the dialogue or the job description in some way that just feels really funny to me. We haven't done that.
We've always focused so much. I love the art of marketing, but for some reason, people think it's only art. And there's so much science.
I interviewed somebody for the MMA, and she was explaining to me last night, and she was explaining to me that the marketing team there they really thought they were just making pretty pictures. And I was like, that's what the marketing team thought they were doing? And it was very fun. It was a very small kind of B2B company, but it was like, I was like, oh, yeah, that's exactly what's wrong when we let that we don't take more ownership of actually really driving the trajectory of the company.
I think it's really important to continue to have training and be training, and developing your marketers so they understand what the science and business of marketing is all about.
Yes. And by the way, so just some part of the background, you actually have an undergrad degree in finance. I think I saw.
Howard University.
And somewhere along the line, you went back to get an MBA, but then you somewhere midstream or something, I don't know, switched and made that about. I think your concentration was marketing, at least one of the concentrations in your MBA, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that's right.
And why'd you make that switch, by the way? What got you, and where was that point that you sort of made that, I think, a shift? I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah, so actually when I came out of college, I worked in finance. I was working in financial planning and analysis at an airline that is no longer here, at Northwest Airlines in Minnesota. And I did that for 2 years. And I think what I felt was missing for me was the creative lens. So I've always been data driven. I've always been needed numbers. I was like anchored in it. Like I felt like I didn't have any sort of leg to stand on to communicate size of prize or opportunity without data. And it's sort of how I developed and grew. But then I was missing kind of that creative part and the art. And so I felt, okay, let me go back to business school and let me explore other opportunities. I had the great fortune of working with several folks who had been in business school and who had graduated and had a variety of different careers. Some were in yield management in the airline and some were in, FP&A or ad hoc or whatever. And so from that experience, I decided to go back, and marketing was one of the first things that I kind of started to lean towards. And I'm very happy that I chose the field.
I love it when people sort of, when they don't start there, but they find an excitement about it. I don't know if you have to originally have it if you're a transplant. I don't know if it really matters to kind of that. I mean, listen, I always wanted to be in marketing ever since I was a kid. Isn't that funny? I think it's because I watched Bewitched too much as a child, I'm guessing. I don't know. Must have been it.
That's interesting.
I don't know why. Yeah, isn't it funny?
Yeah.
I had read George Lois. There's a book by George Lois. The name of that book will escape me at the moment. But George Lois and then Jerry Della Femina. And he had written a book called From Those Wonderful People Who Brought You Pearl Harbor. And the book was only in the library. I couldn't check it out at that point. We weren't buying books on Amazon, so there wasn't access to it. But I went to the library on a succession of days just to read that book. And I was so enamored with the business, I decided that's what I was going to do. Isn't that funny?
Wow, that's amazing. I love that. Well, I think that's how I ended up in beauty. My first job was in beauty. I worked at a hair salon.
Oh.
Yeah, I was washing hair. I was like in high school and I was like doing hair. And who knew that was serendipitous that I would end up working in beauty for a little bit. So,
It's very funny. I've just, boy, we're really off track here. We'll come back on that, listener. But my kids just turned, they just graduated. Two of my daughters, twins, just graduated from university and stuff.
I have twins also, right?
I know, it's crazy,
Isn't
it?
that wild?
It's very popular.
Yeah.
Twins are very popular, like we did it by design. But the funny thing is that I said to them, I says, listen, plan your career as best you can, but I guarantee you will have no idea towards the end, whatever that might be. But like you will have no idea how you really got there.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised at the serendipitous sort of route that you would take based on these sort of limited experiences that at some point appeared in your past that become big in your future. It's very funny.
It is so interesting. And it takes reflection sometimes to even know where you've come from and how you got to where you are, kind of. So
yes, absolutely.
Spending time on that is key. Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, here we have marketing to go fix. So listen, there's another thing though, too, that we are making everyone aware of today is that the global board, well, let's see, by the time this will have come out, the global board will have voted you in as vice chair of the MMA. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited. I love the MMA. As I told my boss as I was asking for permission to do this, what I really love about the MMA is the way that the MMA helps marketers solve business problems.
Yes.
And does so in a way that is structured but brings science to it, and a level of analytical rigor that I think is so needed in our space. As I told you, I started in finance, so that's where my heart lies. And it helps marketers communicate to the organization better.
We need to be a little more right than wrong sometimes. And that's not to take away the creative, because I think the X factor is creative. Don't lose that. Don't lose brand. Don't lose the importance of that, right? But it can change the trajectory forever. I'm concerned that procurement department sometimes, and I don't know Kellanova, so no comment there, but I'm concerned that procurement don't understand that X factor also, while we also get some of the fundamentals better. Yeah.
100%. And actually, speaking of creative, just a little plug, because next week, and obviously this will have aired, but next week I'm bringing my top marketers together for a masterclass. We're doing it with Cannes Lion in partnership with them for 2 days, about 50 marketers from around the globe.
Wow.
So talk about creative and the importance of creative and creative effectiveness. It's half the way there. So if you nail your creative, you are much closer to driving that business overall effectiveness that we know is so important. So I 100% support and believe in continuous learning and that development that,
Good.
is so key for all of our marketers, but like anchoring it in creative.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Well, listen here, let's jump into this one a little bit here. So we sent you the question. You kind of know where we're going to go, but let me just kind of set up here for the listener. Building better CMOs. It's all about trying to understand from those who are sort of the broad perspective like you have and other CMOs, like what do you think that we as marketers don't either fully understand, maybe don't completely conceptualize, maybe don't appreciate, maybe it could be something that we believe to be true, but really you think in your heart of hearts maybe isn't. You can disclose it here. But it's really about like, where do you think we really need to have some massive improvement and that we could just be better than we are right now? That's all. I'm not trying to be critical. It's just, where can we be better? What do you think that is?
I think that we continually underestimate the impact of marketing. And for me, thinking about the full value of marketing from the short and the long term of it is where we continue as an industry. And I think as marketers are missing the mark in terms of our communication strategy within the organization, as well as how we look at, measure, and think about immediate versus long-term business results or long-term brand equity. That's something that I think we're all trying to tackle. I know you're doing quite a lot of work at the MMA to help us make progress in this space, but that's one big area of opportunity for us.
Let's assume for the moment, MMA has some answers around this, and we can talk about them. But what do you think we miss by not knowing that now, Charisse? What do you think happens? What's the maybe negative consequence of the business because this question hasn't been fully answered or addressed in some regard?
I think it's just short-termism. I think we just are so focused on the here and now, and we are potentially sacrificing value in the long term because we're thinking so, on the immediate. Like, as I said to you, I was listening to a CEO who I won't name, but who said that they were going to increase their spending in marketing because the investment was going to pay off significantly better than any promotion you could ever do. And I think if you have that mindset and you think about what are the implications of the full mix and what does it mean today and tomorrow, some choices would be very different. And so I feel like we as a marketing community have to get better at educating our organization, our CEOs, our CFOs on what is the value of a click, today, what is the value over the course of time, and, what trade-offs are we making here and why? I think that's really key.
And we've not been good. Do you it's maybe an esoteric question, so you can even choose not to answer if you want, but why do you think the industry, I mentioned to you that 250 CMOs that I've talked to about some of what the MMA is working in, they have all identified as one of the top one or two issues in discussion in their company is this long versus short term. So if it's on everybody's mind, why have we as marketers not gone and resolved? Why have we just not tried to answer it? It feels funny to me, and I don't know. Maybe there's a part of that says, "Who cares?" But let's go fix it.
No, I mean we need to fix it, and I think, as I said to you, I think there's like the two schools of thought around brand versus performance. And I think if you grew up as a brand marketer, then you think that you are only measuring brand power and you're only measuring the different dimensions of your brand equity and whether it's consistent or not consistent, or did you land your impression. But you aren't taking it to the next level, which is understanding the value of the algorithm or really tying more closely. I love one of the best bits of analysis that I did in my prior life is understanding the correlation between the funnel metrics and my brand performance. So if you understand, what's going to drive this consumer from awareness to consideration, looking at the full media mix, that will help you think more holistically about your business from a short and a long-term standpoint. And I don't think we're doing that as much as we should.
What made you do that research or that analysis, and or what did you do if it's not been too long?
Great question. So first, let me tell you why I did it, is because I was in retail. And in retail, you're not just focused on the short term, you're focused on the now term. What did we just sell last hour?
on the last night term, last hour term.
Exactly.
There you go, exactly. Yeah.
So I
got a lot of CMOs in retail. Oh my God, that could be a brutal data inflow.
It's brutal. The data is real, and you're trying to explain it and justify it. And I probably need to go back and look into my files and explore how we did this. But I did it with an agency because at the time, the business problem that I was solving was how do I get the consumer who's aware of me to consider me, because I'm getting such a drop off to that consideration phase. So how do I do that? And so we wanted to look comparatively at how we're investing our media across the funnel and then do some correlation analysis to really shift that metric. And that way I think was a really good big unlock. But I had a CEO he was the president of the region that I was working for. And I wanted to have some data and some insights that I could share with him to bring him along on the journey to say, you know what? Okay, every quarter having a promotion is probably not the right strategy for a jewelry brand. So how do we kind of pull back there? You're encouraging the consumer to wait. And so there's implications to the kind of the full marketing mix of understanding these different stages of the funnel and how you want to shape your full strategy to go after that business.
And for that brand, for that company, that product, I'm going to say, it really is about brand.
Yeah, 100%.
Kind of largely about
100%.
brand.
I mean, it's the largest jewelry brand that there is, that's branded jewelry.
Yeah.
Because there aren't many branded jewelry. I mean, Tiffany is the other one, right?
Yep.
So there aren't that many.
Let me ask you, what was it like to go? Because you were at Estee Lauder before. Am I remembering this right?
Was.
Okay. So you're Estee Lauder. You go to retail. You go to Pandora. So what was that transition? Because you went from the maximum of brand to a brand oriented but retail, which is we're kind of saying a unique, sort of a semi-unique combination, I guess, right?
Yeah, I think it was super complementary. And like, I have this philosophy of lifelong learning. My mother was a teacher for 33 years. So it's kind of a value of mine. And I wanted to have more deeper exposure to the performance side because I just knew I could see what was happening in marketing. And I felt like there's no better way to get this learning than to be there, to be working in retail. Yeah, we had e-commerce, but within a big company like that, you have an e-commerce team. It's more of a matrix. And so I was responsible for the visual identity on e-commerce, but not the operations associated with that. But when I went to Pandora, I was able to get that experience, have e-commerce experience. We had digital media, but we had first-party data.
Yep.
Before first-party data was really as valuable as it is now. So that was 2015.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of early for a marketer being focused on data.
Talk about understanding your consumer. There's no excuse not to when you're in retail. I hate to say it, but it's true.
So at the risk of kind of trying to lead the witness here or otherwise, I'm not trying to trip you up on this, but I'm curious. So, listen, I actually do know now the value of brand in the way the CFO because of this research project that, as you know, we've been working on at the MMA call. We call it the Brand as Performance Initiative. And it was really set up because we heard that tension between performance-oriented marketers and brand. In fact, the way it was always articulated, the way I would hear it was that the brand people would say the performance-oriented people were ruining the business. They had no appreciation for long-term customer brand equity. And if you'd ask the performance people, they'd say things, well, the brand people are for the rainbows and unicorns and they have no measurable goals. So there was a tension in that. Mm-hmm. And we took a step back and we said, well, that's a math problem. That's not we got to go to Mars kind of problem that's never been done. This is a math problem. So, and the issue is that can you collect the data? So for the listener, we've been running now 3 studies, Ally, Campbell's, and Kroger's, brands who stepped forward to go execute that research a couple of years ago. When you would talk about brand before, were you able to articulate in a business sense what brand you thought was worth to a company? Or my guessing is maybe no on that, but because I don't think any of us knew. And I worked in brand too as a long time, like I mentioned, but we didn't really know then, right?
Yeah, I think you had to your point, we have the brand tracker, which
you
tells
have a brand
you
tracker,
your
which gives you
equities.
some, but it's almost impossible to move a brand tracker, right? Brand trackers don't move.
It takes forever to move a brand tracker, yeah.
We don't know relationship to sales, correct, generally?
Nope.
Generally
You don't know
tracker?
Nope. You don't know the relationship to sales. You know your power, you know how you compare to your competitors. And then you're making some inference or deduction or whatever the word is on what that means to market share or share of voice and things that you can put numbers and data around, but typically no.
Yeah, we really didn't know, isn't it? It's kind of nuts to me. It's sort of crazy. And by the way, like I said, let me be clear here. I worked in brand for a very long time on behalf of Procter at various ad agencies. And although it was the big thesis, we didn't know. Well, here's what we do know now a little bit. And I don't have pattern recognition because I don't have enough data. So I want to be a little careful with the listeners that we're not getting too carried away here. But in the first study we did, we found that if a brand campaign, a brand-focused campaign, developed $100 in sales today, that we saw it develop upwards of, for at least for the one financial study, I think we saw like another $150. So you're like 2.5x with the original sales. So now you go, oh, brand actually matters long term. Okay. In the Kroger's case study, we actually had told the boards at one point that we thought the number was around plus 550. We're now about to announce at the possible event, so this would have come out already, that we think that number is actually closer to plus $750 on that initial $100. That's massive gain. And it will be really interesting for you, I suspect, for Kellanova to really see what the Campbell study looks like and what that means over time.
Yeah, I'll be excited to see that.
We did also find that once a consumer was made favorable, that they appreciated the brand, they liked the brand, whatever the brand would be, we saw that the cost of acquisition was 85% lower. And it's led to say, funny, brand works both top of the funnel and lower funnel. That's a very funny thing to say because most people wouldn't have ever sort of acknowledged that.
Absolutely.
They tried to separate those things and we're like, they're not separated, they're integrated and they drive the whole business.
Which is why the funnel is so important. We've been building education within our company around the funnel and how you think about the funnel. And the funnel is not just a marketing tool. The funnel is a commercial tool to understand how the consumer navigates their journey. I think if we were to talk about it more that way, there could be more adoption and engagement and understanding.
So the important part of funnel is really customer journey is what it helps us outline.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you think you would have ever been willing to tell a previous CFO? That's a broad, open-ended question. Would you have been ever willing to tell a CFO that, hey, we think that the brand campaign we're running today actually develops sales 7-8x to what we think it is initially? Because listen, you would, when you'd run a brand campaign, you would know the sales. You can isolate sales. Media mix modeling could have done that. I don't think I would have been willing to say it was that big.
I think you'd be very nervous to say that. And I think that's some of the risk aversion also, right?
Yeah.
If you haven't proven it in your business, the implications are that you're overpromising and you underdeliver.
I'd be curious what you think this kind of data would mean, but I'm hoping that it puts the CMO and the CFO at the same side of the table to figure out a investment strategy for the company through marketing. Because when I start to know the value of brand, when it's, and listen, I've done all that too with clients and as a marketer myself, talking about sort of the softer side of what some of these metrics mean, but that's hard when you're trying to translate to real business terms, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing is that it reinforces the importance of experimentation. Like It really means that you and the CFO, should be lockstep on this journey of experimentation that I'm continuously improving, right?
I do hope, though, that, that with some of this data, you really could start to come together because there is a part. Listen, my original training in undergrad was in economics, as an economist, right? And one of my big takeaways from that is that if we don't know, it's probably undervalued. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my sense of most things I've sort of looked at in life. Isn't that funny? If we don't really, listen, the same thing was true when I was out, when I was running the IB and we were trying to develop online advertising as a business. It was very clear to me that consumers were fast to move to internet, but marketers were slow to move. Mm-hmm. And because of that slowness, so if you have a high supply of inventory and, middling demand from marketers, that inventory was going to be the deal of the century. And I went and actually spent $5 million in developing multi-touch attribution. It's the first time that methodology has been used to validate online. We basically proved the obvious, which is that if it's undervalued, it's underpriced. And so brand here is all valued. It's still undervalued. If we don't know, then we're going to undervalue it because that's just the way business works.
But it's so surprising because we talk about brand so much, right?
I know.
And it's inherent in all of our language and it's pervasive. So, you have the CEO and the CFO talking about brand. So the fact that we haven't cracked this nut, it continues to be a head scratcher, I think.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be back right after this with Charisse Hughes. Thanks for listening to Building Better CMOs. If you have a second, I'd like to ask a quick favor. Take your phone out and share this episode with someone else. It's all about making marketers better. You could text it to a coworker or a friend, easy. Or you can post it on LinkedIn and tell people why you liked it. There's one other thing that you can do to help building better CMOs, and that's to leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. There's a link to do it in the show notes. However you support us, I really appreciate it. Thank you. This is Greg Stewart. Now back to the show. This is Building Better CMOs. Let's get right back to my conversation with Charisse Hughes, Senior Vice President and Chief Growth Officer at Kellanova. Let me ask you about another thing. You have now, at least from what I can tell you, been in the C-suite, been a CMO, Chief Growth Officer, twice now you've done 2 different companies. Were you always determined to get there? Was that always your destination? Is that where you were aiming for? And then how did you actually even end up there then?
Yeah, we kind of hit on it a little bit earlier. I was at a bit of a pivot point in my career after leaving Estee Lauder. I'd been on this amazing career trajectory, again, focused heavily on brand. And as we said, a capital BRAND, because the brands are king and queen there. And I was ready for a new challenge for sure. But I was also thinking about my life because I was a woman of a certain age. I think I was 45 at the time. And I was single, no children. And I felt like I was on a bit of a career hamster wheel. Or I shouldn't say hamster wheel. I was on an amazing career trajectory, but I felt like I was on a hamster wheel of work being the sole focus of my life, and I needed to balance that. I knew I wanted to have a family. I would have loved to be married. I just didn't make the time for it, and so I needed to do that. Anyway, so there was that big time commitment with Lauder, and then I decided that there was so much happening in the space of digital data, e-commerce, that I needed to somehow learn that in a very I'm a learning by doing type of person.
Yeah.
I started to look. I actually took 6 months off. I took a leave of absence, and I had lots of conversations and explored, and ended up interviewing with Pandora for their CMO of the Americas. When I landed at Pandora, they had kind of 3 key issues that they were confronted with. One was that the brand, from a relevance standpoint and a perception standpoint, was viewed as being cheap, low quality, and it was a charm bracelet business, which is a very big fish in a very small pond. Charm bracelets are like 10% of the jewelry market. The second thing was they were trying to evolve their store network because they were a franchisee business model, and so they wanted to evolve into own channels, inclusive of e-commerce. And then the third channel is that the business was really not developed outside of North America. And so those 3 were really interesting opportunities. And talk about growth now with the role and title of growth officer. Those are all those are channel challenges. Those are brand business challenges. Those are category challenges, right? All of which are levers for growth. So I took that job. I was there for 6 years, and I actually wasn't seeking really like a CMO title, but I was the CMO of the Americas region. And then, got to 2020 and decided that I really needed to work for a company that was US based, that was committed to the changes that needed to happen from a societal standpoint, and wanted to be leaning into purpose much more than I ever had. 50-year-old person at that time. So you start to think about your legacy and what you want to leave behind, and how you want your grandchildren and children to think about you.
Those years matter. They really do. I've watched the trends myself. I totally agree. I remember the point. It's just what you just said. I remember the point when I was spending a little more time looking back than looking forward.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, because you had always, I'm sure you were always the young, bright upstart who's kicking ass, taking names, whatever, right?
Driving forward, driving. Yeah. And sometimes you got to pause and stop and say, okay, what am I doing? Who is it for? Yeah. Who am I helping? Yeah. And so all of those things came into play, which is really the reason why I ended up at Kellanova. I mean, amazing brands and legacy.
Crazy.
But more importantly, I wanted to be at a company that really had purpose at the heart of what the company stands for.
Wasn't your first sort of a brand company? I know you did a stint in finance, but I guess maybe
I worked at Sara Lee. I worked at Sara Lee, and actually my very first marketing job, I worked at Ralph Lauren Intimates. So Sara Lee owned the license for intimate apparel with Ralph. So that's when I moved to New York, and that was my first marketing gig. We launched intimate apparel in department stores.
But did you expect that you would eventually, were you oriented to be in the C-suite of a big company?
I had
I
had
the listener didn't see you make the face on that.
I never would have expected this. I mean, listen,
Really?
I've always been, hardworking and results oriented and wanting to do a good job, but I didn't think for a minute that I would end up here. It's so funny. When you reflect on the journey. Yeah, I was sort of putting one foot in front of the other, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking long-term vision. But I did have some really great marketers that I worked with early on in my career. And that starts to help to shape what could be possible.
Yeah.
Not to use that
to use an event name there for you. An MMA event name, possible. Exactly. Coming up pretty soon. In fact, I think actually this gets released in the backside of possible. I think it's going to when this episode comes out. So you just kind of one foot in front of another and just kept going in that direction.
Yeah. I've had some amazing leaders. So my bosses have been fantastic at every single step of my career.
If you were to pick the, stack rank list of what best helped you ended up in the C-suite, let's assume that some other people want to try and get there. What advice would you have for them in doing that? Like, what did you do and what did you learn from that, I guess?
I would say I was always seeking forward momentum.
Okay.
So
what does that mean?
That means that I wanted to learn. So as I got into marketing and I wanted to learn more. I was seeking that next bit of knowledge that was going to help me grow and develop further. So for instance, when I was in Ralph Lauren Intimates, it was heavily merchandising driven. And so you were sort of deep into that piece, but the image piece was built into the license. It wasn't built into the spend. So I didn't learn a whole lot about the spend because we were relying on the halo that came with Ralph Lauren, right? So there was not a lot of development of creative and all of that. So I felt like I understood marketing and the elements and the skills that are needed to be a great marketer. And I just wanted to tick away at those and get better at my skill development.
So you set out to build the best marketer, which was yourself, that you could.
Yes.
By being acquisition of information, data, and or those who you felt knew more than you did at the time.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so important.
And one thing I'm going to tell you that I did every year, and I still do, at the end of every year, I take an assessment of where I am. Like, okay, what did I learn this year? What do I think I still need to refine and develop? And it's more important in the earlier parts of your career as you're building your toolkit is to really have a good sense on where you are, where you stack up, almost a personal assessment every year.
Do you ask anybody to help you kind of do that assessment?
Yeah, I mean, you have a 360. I mean, you may not have those annually, but you would have them every few years. And then you rely on your boss. Like, what do you think, here's what I directionally think I should be doing. And what do you think I should be doing? But then to your point, your network and I didn't develop a network early in my career, but over the course of time, I built a community of marketers that were friends and I carried them from relationship to relationship, from company to company and job to job. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's an incredibly important thing to sort of acquire a kind of group of talent that you can refer back to. I think it's one of the single greatest things. I actually used to point out to people that my view now, just back to your point, looking back, is that I think there comes a point in your career, I think it's about when you hit 50, if they don't know you or can't triangulate to you easily, to a friend of theirs, you're not going to get hired. I think it gets kind of tough as that pyramid sort of narrows in people. That's my sense of it.
And you think in more senior roles, or you think that's...
in more senior roles.
Yeah, more senior roles, I think that's 100% true.
Yeah, you have to be known, or there has to be somebody to really vouch for you that's connected somehow either to that board or others. Yeah, otherwise,
I think that's true.
Otherwise you could be personal. So I agree with you in a big way in collecting those sort of
the board of directors or communities or networks, however you want to term it. Yeah, it's really key.
I think it's really key, right?
Yeah.
What do you think it means for you to operate too at this level? I mean, listen, there's a lot of pressure. We've got a fellow board member, I won't name who, their company just had a data breach, and those are kind of traumatic events and hard to navigate, and there's a lot of pressure on these companies. Or like the comment I made earlier, a friend of mine that didn't want to do this research around brand's performance because she didn't want to tick a couple billion off the fifth. I mean, there's a lot at stake, and that impacts a lot of people. So it does produce kind of a sense of maybe caution something, but what do you think it takes to kind of continue to operate at the senior level and to be successful?
I mean, I think one of the most important things is stakeholder management. I like understanding the landscape clearly. And to your point, what's at stake and what the trade-offs are. I think weighing options is really key at this level. So having a degree of discernment for sure.
Is that like just good decision making and assessing risk? Is that where you're going?
It's assessing risk, but you can assess risk and I think still not make it the right decision. So I think it is decision.
Think about that for a moment. That's tricky, but yeah, go ahead.
But it is having processes and bringing the right people to the table to have those discussions and making sure that it's a well-rounded sort of cross-functional group of leaders who are involved in assessing and defining what could go wrong and what are our options here. So decision making is a part of it. I think poise under uncertainty.
The ability to live with ambiguity.
The ability to live with ambiguity. And I tell my team all the time this phrase of balancing hard truths with optimism is also really, really key. Like seeing what's difficult, but then being able to rally and inspire the team and the organization around the mission in front of you.
Do you really like what you do, Charisse?
I really do. I really
do.
do. Wow. Can you see it in my face?
100% all the time. Why?
I
mean, constantly learning. I get that. I love the challenge. I hear you with the challenge too.
Well, I love insights. I love consumer insights. I like to mine and understand like what would motivate and inspire a consumer to take an action. So, and what might that look like in terms of creative or messaging and like the iteration of that. I also really like it when it's data driven too, by the way. I really value that. I also like thinking about business problems strategically, like as we've been talking about this AI journey that so many of us are on. It's like starting with the business problem. This is not a data or a technology problem. This is a business problem. I need more consumers to be considering me when they're at the digital or physical shelf. And how do I think about doing that and leveraging data to do it? And so that also is really exciting. But there's also a degree of immediacy that I get energized about when you think about doing test and learns and experimenting and seeing where you can drive impact or where you aren't, and sort of picking that apart.
I hear you kind of as the puzzle trying to unravel.
It's a little bit of a puzzle. I play a puzzle every day, actually. I'm like a puzzle person.
I think that's what it comes down to. And I think that's why you get, dare I say, paid, and I'm not talking about you, just in general, sort of people who get, like, you get paid the big bucks and the ability to sort of balance all those puzzle pieces that come together in a unique sort of powerful combination that really drives a business. And it's a constant sort of challenge. I said to somebody the other day, in fact, it was a business coach of mine. I said, listen, I'm not the world's greatest CEO. I mean, there's people like Mary Barr, there's bigger CEOs, obviously. Okay, so I got that. I get my role in the world. But I says, I think I'm playing a game of golf every day. You're never going to be perfect, but you try to be better a little bit every day. I find that really interesting.
Yeah, that continuous improvement, I mean, it cannot be underestimated.
Yeah. And then the game changes, and then you got to do it all differently. And then somebody upsets the puzzle board. I don't know, whatever happens, and you got to go at it again.
You got to go at it again. That's the excitement of it. It's going at it again every day.
No, it really shows. As I've gotten to know you, it really shows with you that that's really kind of what you're about. You're just there to kind of figure the world out in the best possible way you can. And
lucky to have partners like you to help.
Yeah, I don't know. We're all having fun together here, that's for sure.
We are.
Okay, listen, here. I got a couple of lightning round questions, and we're gonna wrap up and let you go here. Okay, so you may have already said it. Who do you really admire out there? Give somebody. It can't be Kellanova. You got to stay away from your own brand.
Yeah.
So, any previous companies.
Yeah, I have to. I want to say, Mark Pritchard and Procter and Gamble, and honestly, I think a lot of it has to do with his brand focus and sharpening the lens around purpose but more importantly around ED&I and all that he's done to make impact in that space and just to broaden all of our thinking around being more inclusive and seeing another side of people, which I think is the whole point.
Is it what he stands for, or is it that he's taken such a leadership role in the industry around some of this stuff?
It's got to be both. It's got to be both because you've got incredible courage to take that on your shoulders within your company and then to pioneer it across the industry as well.
And to feel that as a sense of responsibility.
100%.
And a company like Procter & Gamble has that responsibility. That's right. 100%.
That's right. And talk 100%. About knocking off percentages, right, from the value. The implications but they're very sharp, and they've been investing in this journey for a very long time. So
what do you think's most overhyped? And then I'm also going to ask you what's most underappreciated in marketing. So what do you think? Is there anything you think is kind of really overhyped in marketing today?
I mean, we spend a lot of time on short-term things. That is part of it. Going viral maybe is something. We're so sure. I mean, the short-termism is real. It's nuts.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. It's crazy how much people have sort of fixated on that, or even, you kind of used it earlier, like last click attribution. I mean, there's no value. I can tell you, I've done the research. There is no relationship between click-through and sales. None. Yeah. No, doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And
because
yet
it's not engagement.
sometimes.
Because it's not engagement. It's not real engagement. It's actually...
No, and it's a false lead. You don't know what attributed to it. Right, exactly. Okay, what do you think is most underappreciated in marketing today?
I think the importance of having regulation in social media.
Oh, okay.
A level of regulation in social media I do think is necessary.
Why are you saying is it because you're a parent?
It's because I'm a parent, 100%. I'm going to be a grandparent at some point in the future, and I care about this generation. I've been just reading so much about the implications of whether it be body complex or psychological like comparisons, and it's leading to so much depression and sadness. And I think that is dangerous for us as we age, obviously, and for the next generation of children as well.
Yeah, no, I've had daughters who grew up in the age of social media. I think they got their first phones right when Snap came out, which is, kind of part of the beginning that really kicked into high gear and kind of changed the game pretty dramatically. And I've sort of watched the impact of them, and I certainly saw it operate throughout their high school, which I thought was really an awful period. I just was like, oh my God, I just can't believe that this is what they're having to face and deal with. Yeah.
And what you're talking about is a key lever for marketers. And I believe in social media for marketers as well. I just think that there's checks and balances that are needed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's bigger than us, and I don't know if we're going to solve that in building better CMOs, but let's hope that let's continue to encourage more work in that area. Charisse, I can't thank you enough for doing this. It's super exciting. I love having you on the board. The board loves having you there. Obviously, that's why you got voted vice chair. I mean, there was just, it was a very I don't know if I told you this, right? They were like, we really like how she thinks. And we love the way that she's so forward about sort of helping to understand her situation, especially the work you did around the marketing org work that you had done and shared with the board. They were super appreciative of that. So
that was so fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. Really great work. And we're running with it. It's really exciting. So thank you for having me, Greg.
You bet. Thank you. Thanks again to Charisse Hughes from Kellanova for coming on Building Better CMOs. Check the description of this episode for links to connect with Charisse. And if you want to know more about MMA's work to unlock the power of marketing, please visit MMAglobal.com. Or you can attend any of our 30 conferences in 16 countries where MMA operates, or write me, Greg, at MMAglobal.com. Thank you so much for listening. Tap the link in the description to leave us a review. If you're new to the show, please follow or subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcast. You can find links to all those places and more at bettercmos.com. Our producer and podcast consultant is Eric Johnson from lightningpod.fm. Our project manager is Lily Mahoney. Artwork is by Jason Chase, and a special thanks to LaSarah Smith. This is Greg Stewart. I'll see you in 2 weeks.